What's going on, everyone? I'm Paul from the Low to High podcast, and in this week's episode, I interview ESPN announcer and reporter Quint Kessenich. Quint's from Long Island, New York. He was a goalie in high school, and he attended Johns Hopkins University, where he was an All-American and he won a national championship. Quint currently works for ESPN reporting a variety of different college sports, but he's most well known for his college lacrosse announcing. Quint and I talked about his experience at Johns Hopkins, why he got into reporting, and we talked about why championship weekend in college lacrosse is unlike any other sport. Be sure to go follow Quint on Instagram at Quint Kessenich and look out for him on college football game days as a sideline reporter. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoy the show, and let's get right into it. With me today on the Low to High podcast, I have Mr. Quint Kessenich. Quint, how are you doing, man?
Doing well, low to high. It's that's a scary, when you're a former goaltender, that's a scary term, low to high. There were certain guys whose low to high was unstoppable back in the day, and there was others who, when they took a low to high, you kind of laughed at them like, okay, I've seen that movie before.
Yeah, since the back then the pockets were a little bit shallower, so it was a little bit
correct.
harder.
A low to high back then wasn't exactly what it is today.
A lot harder to shoot. So Thanksgiving was last week. How was your Thanksgiving?
It was okay. I was home. We had a partial Thanksgiving, and then I had to get on the road for a game on Saturday. So it was very abbreviated and much smaller than typical, but it was safe, and the cooking was outstanding. We brined a turkey, let it soak for a day, and it was a little smaller than usual, and the combination of the marination and maybe its size and the fact that it was fresh from a local farm here, it was maybe the best turkey I've ever eaten.
Are you a turkey only, or do you like the sides more?
I respect Thanksgiving. Unlike Carcaterra, who was ripping turkey on Twitter. Like, I understand the significance of Thanksgiving. Okay, these were people who left their homes in Europe and came over here. Many of them were killed along the way by disease. They were constantly battling the elements. They were constantly battling, their surroundings. And for them to sit down and have a meal, I think we should celebrate what they were able to eat, and not take shots at turkey like Mr. Carcaterra did.
If you had to rank your sides between mashed potatoes, stuffing, and then one other of your choice, what do you think it would be?
Mashed potato stuffing. I'm a big gravy. You got to hit it with the gravy, and then my sister usually brings over some sides from the vegetable department, whether it's Brussels sprouts, with bacon and garlic, or broccoli. She's a chef in the highest degree in terms of making great vegetable dishes. So whether it's a cauliflower, more seasonal this time of year, cauliflower, some of your gourds, so to speak, the squash family. So
that's awesome. I actually tried to make mac and cheese as one of my sides for my family Thanksgiving. Turns out it's a lot harder to make from scratch. It's turned out to be really dry, and the cheese was just curding when I started making it and mixing it together. So I was a little disappointed, but you gotta live and learn.
Yeah, Thanksgiving for me growing up was always the last meal. As a former high school wrestler, it was really the last time that we could dig into a meal. Christmas was a miserable dinner. Usually we had a wrestling tournament when I was growing up 3 days after Christmas. And so my cousins used to look at me like, what are you doing? I'm like, eating a tiny little piece of roast beef, and, weight was always on our mind for Christmas, but not Thanksgiving. So me and my brothers used to go at it pretty good.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So you've been covering college football a lot. How's that been so far, especially during the pandemic?
It's been very different. It's been very interesting, very different. Every week is its own season unto itself. I think I've done 13 games. I've been to a variety of places. The protocols at each of the venues may be slightly different, but safety is paramount. I get tested once or twice a week. When I travel, I've been going to games. A lot of times my announce crew is not on site, that they're calling the game from home or from a studio. So I'm fortunate to be there in person. I've done games like LSU had about 25,000 fans, and I've done some games with empty stadiums. Last week at Michigan State, there wasn't a single fan there. And so it was eerie. I've done games in that stadium that were just absolutely lit. Some of the best moments that I've been around, in these big stadiums in LSU, or South Carolina, and now they're empty, and it's very different. But the fact that I'm able to go and cover games has really been great for my mental health. It gives me a purpose. It gives me a reason to move forward. So I'm very thankful for those at our company who have enabled us to go cover games, whether it's, there's a lot of protocols we go through with the testing. There's a lot of safety procedures, and they valued our presence at the game. So I thank them because it's really been, it's really helped me through the pandemic.
Yeah, I could totally understand. What do you think has been your favorite game to call so far?
This year, I've had some interesting games this year. I go back to a Navy Tulane game in September when Navy was down 24-0 at halftime. This is after losing to BYU 55-3 the prior week. So they're down like an aggregate, I don't know, 79-3. And all of a sudden they turn that one around and actually win that game. So I've seen Cincinnati. They're a really good team. I'm not sure they're going to make the college football playoff. I got to see Missouri beat LSU at home, a pretty dramatic goal line stand. I was at South Carolina, which is one of my favorite spots when there's fans there. Their presentation of the football game in that stadium is cool. Had a home game at Maryland on a Friday night where the Terps beat Minnesota. That was enjoyable. I got to see A&M. They're really good, especially on offense. Called a nice competitive, maybe the best overall game I've called this year is Cincinnati at Central Florida in Orlando. It was a beautiful day. And then the last two games I've seen Florida, Kyle Trask and Kyle Pitts. And then Ohio State last week looked great. They were without like 20 players, their head coach, and they played a great game. So, every week it's enjoyable. I like the variety. I don't mind the travel. This year it's very different though. I'm like a spy. I go in, I stay clean, talk to as few people as I can along the way. The travel is like dodging COVID. I'm basically dodging COVID. No restaurants, no hotels. I'm constantly washing. My hands are so dry right now from washing them. So it's basically survival week to week, and you hope to test negative.
Yeah, definitely. I've watched a bunch of those games that you called. I know Maryland. I'm a big Maryland fan, so watching that Maryland Minnesota game after they got killed by Northwestern the week before, seeing them come up in overtime, coming back, and then that Navy. I turned off that Navy game because I saw they were getting blown out. I was tuned in to see their quarterback, who was one of the top lacrosse recruits.
Xavier. That was a game. Honestly, at halftime, if you told me, okay, what is the chances that Navy makes a comeback? Okay, having lost the prior week 55-3, down 24-0, they barely had a first down. I would have given you like 1%, 2%. And next thing you know, they turn that game around. And I walked away. I'm like, you know what? Like there's a reason or a meaning that every game, every game can be special in its own way. And that game was special for me to see Navy's resolve, to see these guys fight, to see these guys refuse to let a bad start of their season just take over in a negative way. And I walked out of there like so impressed with the attitude of those players and that coaching staff.
Yeah, true grit is really what it is. They kept on fighting back, and then they persevered and ended up winning that game. So that was super cool, super fun game to watch. That was also like week 2, so just as football was starting. So have you done any games with any of your guys that you do call lacrosse games with so far this season?
No, Kark and I have never called a football game together, and I've worked some games with Anish Shroff. He is play-by-play. We may get I'm not sure. I've got some bowl games on my schedule. Maybe his name may be on one of them. I'm not sure. But the challenge this year is typically we're put with teams that we stay with over the course of the season. And so it's easy to develop chemistry, continuity, a workflow during the week. This year I've been with 8 or 9 different crews. So that's 8 or 9 different producers, 8 or 9 different booths, 8 or 9 different ways of doing things from Monday to Friday, 8 or 9 different ways of doing things on game day. So it's almost like me having a new coach going to play for a new team every week. That's been the biggest challenge. You learn a lot that way, but it can be frustrating. It can be, what are my expectations? What does this coach, what does this producer want from me? What's this booth want from me? Because obviously as a reporter, I have a complimentary role. I'm a second midi. I come in and kind of do my job when I'm called upon. I'm not the star attackman or the star midi. So how do I fit into what these guys view as their TV product? And you walk away having played for different coaches. You're better off for it. You play for the same coach, you're not really going to grow. So this allows growth, but along the way, it puts you in some situations that are, I don't want to say frustrating, but they're challenging.
Do you think that challenge helps you adapt and become a better reporter as the season
Absolutely.
continues?
I know, absolutely. I'm the type of guy, I over prepare. I mean, I could show you my notes. It's Tuesday and I've already, watching tape this morning on West Virginia, watching their last 3 games and just jogging down notes. I mean, I go into a game, this is just the start, but I go into a game pretty much, 90% or 80% of what I do will not make error. So for number one, you got to understand that and don't get down by that. But when the game breaks your way and you have a good nugget on a certain player or a situation, you feel that it was worth it. So I don't mind doing the work. I like the process. It's not like this time of year I have other duties professionally. So I dive in and I love football. My dad was a high school football coach. And so everything about the studying for a game is enjoyable to me. I'm lucky. It's what I wanted to do.
Yeah, that's a super cool job. I love that, especially like doing all that, especially like getting to watch football. I know it's like watching film isn't like just a fun thing. It's a job to do. You have to analyze all the plays and stuff, but like it seems like a job. Like at the end of the day, do you think like it's worth it? Definitely.
Yeah. And the thing that's different this year is typically in the past, I've watched more and more tape over the last 10 years, let's say. When I first started, I would do all the paperwork first and then watch tape late in the week. Now I've reversed my process entirely. I watch a ton of tape early in the week, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, find out who the stars are, find out what the situations I may need to know. Then I do the paperwork on planes and in hotels. And in the past, I've been lucky enough to watch film with the analysts. The two greatest teaching situations I had was working a year with Matt Millen, the former GM of the Lions, former player at Penn State, NFL. I think he's got 4 rings. He was a linebacker, D lineman, and then Chris Spielman, Ohio State. And to watch film an hour to 2 to more on every Friday with them was tremendously educational. And then the year I worked with Urban Meyer, also watching tape with him in those sessions was just gigantic in terms of seeing formations, analyzing players' strengths and weaknesses, secondary coverages, just how to watch football like a coach.
Yeah, just getting like a firsthand view of seeing what they see almost every single day.
Correct. As a fan at home, you're watching the ball, you're watching Lamar Jackson and the quarterback. That's the last thing that those guys are going to watch. At the snap, they're watching the coverage. They're seeing the safeties. Is it a 1 high look, a 2 high look? Is it man? Is it zone? What's going on in the front? Are they bringing 4? Are they going to sneak a 5th in? And so to look at it that way, and then to break it down on the individual standpoint, like what's a player's strengths and weaknesses. It's fascinating, and I've been very lucky, and I've tried to carry that over to lacrosse.
Yeah.
I think that's really helped me in watching lacrosse tape is working with those experts from football.
For sure, definitely. So let's start off with a couple of questions. So where are you originally from?
Lynbrook, Long Island, South Shore, Nassau County, small little town, couple towns in from Queens. Could walk to my elementary school, could walk to my middle school. I rode my bike to high school. 2 older brothers, 1 younger sister. My mom taught in our high school. She taught math in our high school. My dad taught at Oceanside High School, which was down the road, and he coached there. So I grew up on his sidelines and going to his practices. And then we had a great. Our town was pretty sports. This is 1970s, 1980s, where rec was the deal. So everyone played rec football. It was cheap. They gave you all the equipment. Everyone played rec lacrosse. I think it cost $20 for the whole season. They gave you a helmet and gloves. All you had to supply was a stick. And we were off playing with our friends.
Wow, at $20, it's like add another 3 zeros, and that's what it is.
Yeah, $20 covered your whole season. I think that was just for insurance. Honestly.
Yeah, another.
And our program had the helmets, they had gloves, they had shoulder pads. So really, all you needed. I mean, guys used to show up to practice in jeans and sneakers, but if you had a stick, you could play. And we need to head back in that direction right now as a sport.
Yeah, especially since it's growing so quickly. That has to be a top priority, just to lower equipment prices down.
That's exactly right.
So when did you first start getting into lacrosse?
When I was 5 or 6, my older brothers, I think I was at the back window crying, and they're like, "Come on out, you can play with us." I'm like, "Really? I can play? I get in goal." And so they were 6 and 8 years older than me. So when they were 12, let's say, and 14, I was 6. When they were 15, I was 9. When they were 18, I was, so I was always playing up, uh, playing goalie against them and their friends in the backyard and or driveway, street hockey. Uh, and so that's how I started.
Do you think is that what contributed to you becoming the lacrosse player you are today, with having two older brothers kind of shape your playing style?
I think that helped. Yeah, I think that helped. I grew up in a town where lacrosse it was a pretty good sport. The good athletes in our town played lacrosse. They played either football or soccer. A lot of basketball, or wrestling, or even we had a pretty good wrestling team. But then in the spring, it seemed like the best athletes in our town uh, played lacrosse, and especially back then. And so what started in the backyard then carried over to my friends in the neighborhood, and we play in the street, we play in the tennis courts, we play against the wall at school or the back of my garage. And next thing you know, we were on a team, a rec team that added structure, but our game was based on playing pickup in the backyard. And then a high school team that added more structure. This is how we play defense. This is how we clear. But it's still the soul of the game was uh, our freelance games, 3-on-3 on a tennis court.
Like the Sandlot?
Yeah, exactly. And that's one thing that scares me now when I see these pictures these guys post on Instagram of them coaching little groups of kids and doing drills. We didn't have the game never should start. Drills are miserable. My daughter tried to play lacrosse as a 6-year-old here locally in Maryland, and she came home the first day and was crying. She was miserable. She hated it because it wasn't lacrosse. It was just line drills. Like, you think about that when we introduce the game to kids, it's got to be fun. And so start with the fun and eventually add the structure, eventually add the drills. Like, to get good, we've got to do this. But this is going to be a wild pack of kids throwing the ball around and scoring goals and hitting each other and getting mud in their face. And, that's the fun of the game. And let's not rob kids of the fun.
So almost like I know I coach little kids. I do private lessons with them, and then I also help out at my like my youth program. I'm the head of, the Hungry Hippos game for like little lacrosse players, where like you set them up like behind cones and you let them try and get as many balls as they can. Like that stuff, like they love
Yeah,
that game. And
exactly.
I think stuff like drills like that is what makes the kids want to play lacrosse, because
That's exactly right.
and it's like also hidden, like all the drills that you're doing, picking up ground balls, passing the ball, putting it in the net. So like stuff like that is stuff that even when I started playing was what made me love lacrosse.
Yeah, and make celebrations mandatory.
Yeah, definitely. What I also do is that I give so I do like 4 teams for the kids, and I give them all different college names. So I'm also helping like introduce some of the programs, helping get a little bit more familiar with the sport. So I'll give like one team, oh, you're Johns Hopkins, oh, you're Maryland, you're Duke, you're North Carolina, and then like I keep on doing that for like the coming weeks. I give them new names, and it's so almost like helping them introduce what sport of lacrosse is now, and what the next level kind of looks like.
Yeah, I love all those ideas. Again, you're always thinking fun. You're always thinking about what can I do to make this kid want to come to practice, and then get them a lot of touches, get them a lot of reps. I hate to go see practices where kids are online. Kids are waiting their turn. Everyone should have a ball or a partner and a ball. We should be doing more small side, more 4-on-4, more 3-on-3, more 5-on-5. So you get more reps, whether that's carrying the ball or playing defense on the ball, whether that's shooting. When we play 10-on-10, there's so much downtime, and I don't think kids maximize their time.
Definitely, yeah, you're 100% right on that. So almost going back to when you were a kid, who were some of your favorite athletes growing up?
Ooh, well, I was a huge New York Giants fan growing up. I was a big New York Rangers fan. To this day, I have not been to a Rangers game. All my friends were Islanders fans back when they were owning the NHL. I've been to a couple Islanders games. And I actually was a baseball fan growing up. I love the Mets. So, the Tom Seaver, the old Mookie Wilsons, the Mets World Series teams were some of my heroes. I think my bigger hero, Muhammad Ali, was always a guy. I had Muhammad Ali posters up in my room. And then there were some wrestling figures, Dan Gable, who just got the Medal of Freedom this week. There was a Dan Gable poster down in my weight room in my basement. He was an icon, Olympic champion, and a guy whose work ethic is still hard to touch.
Did you watch the Giants game last Sunday?
I left the Giants. I left when I moved to Maryland. My first year in college was my last farewell because my roommate was from Massachusetts. And so when the Mets beat the Red Sox, that was a celebration. The Giants also won the Super Bowl in that time frame. And then gradually I became a Baltimore Raven fan when they moved the team to Memorial Stadium. I got tickets right away in the end zone.
You've been going, have you, like before pandemic, were you going to a lot of Ravens games?
I don't have season tickets, but I'll try to go to 2 or 3 games a year, depending on my schedule. If I can get home on a Saturday night, sometimes lately with covering so many games out west, I don't get home till Sunday afternoon when the game's already played. But I love the Ravens. The Ravens, to me, they define. It's one time where everyone in Baltimore is like rooting for the same team. It's whether it's rich, poor, what part of town you're from, I don't care. It's like everybody in this town is behind the Ravens. And that's a great thing because we're being torn apart in so many different directions right now in this world. And to have a pro football team that everyone can get behind, that everybody feels strong about, and we're on the same page for that one afternoon. I love that feeling in that stadium.
I think I know New York sports are like some of the greatest sports in history, but I think New York sports, since there's so many different teams, there's not really like one big unity behind like all the fan bases because there's so many different teams, and it's really like hard to get like into all of New York to go behind like just one team, no matter who's playing. Like if the Yankees in the World Series, a bunch of Mets fans want them to lose. If the Mets are in the World Series, a bunch of Yankees fans wants them to lose. Same thing for hockey. If they don't want the other, especially because they're all playing in the same division. So, it's something that would be cool in New York to have like you have in Baltimore and places where there's only one football team. Maybe it's like Houston. I'm trying to think of another, Carolina, towns, places like that where there's only one team you can really root for. So I think that's really special.
No, that's a great point by you. It's usually the mid-tier to smaller market teams, the Green Bays of the world, where those teams are really, really special in their towns because there's not like LA and New York.
Yeah, almost like that's why Friday Night Lights was so big in high school football in Texas because there's not a lot of professional football teams that are close to people, especially if you're in the middle of nowhere, Texas. It's the only thing you can really root for. So that's why I'm assuming that's probably why people got behind that so much.
Yeah, it's a way of life. So many of those traditions are just the way that people pass on how they live from generation to generation. So it's Friday night football, Saturday night they go to they root for Auburn. Sunday there's no pro football, there's church and there's family. So
yeah, you're right. So moving to your high school, you playing in high school. What was your recruiting process like, and why'd you end up choosing Johns Hopkins?
I narrowed it down to 4 schools. As a goalie, basically you've got to say, you know what, there's a kid who's a freshman there and I'm still in high school. I'm either going to go in, and it's not an ideal situation from a playing time standpoint. No, half the schools are probably not recruiting a goalie in that class. Back then they weren't. So you cut everything in half. And my last 4 choices came down to Army, Navy, Virginia, and Johns Hopkins. I took visits to Army, Virginia, and Hopkins. And I committed rather early. And get this, it was February of my senior year. And I was one of the earliest commits, February of my senior year.
Trying to wrap my head around that a little bit right now. Jeez, wow.
There were guys who were playing my senior, like during our senior year into April and May, who like, I just got it, I'm going to Brown. I'm like, hey, congratulations. And like, no one was stressed out about it. It was just the way it was done back then. But I mean, can you imagine you're halfway through your senior season, you don't know, I'm being recruited by X, Y, and Z, but I'm not signed, sealed, or admitted yet. And like dealing with that. And none of us were stressed out about it.
Well, that just tells you how much times have changed. But what about like signing like letter of intent? When would you do that? Would you not do that back in September, November when it is now?
That didn't exist, I don't think.
Really? Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So February, and that's considered. I'm still trying to.
I was early.
Still trying to comprehend that a little bit.
Yeah.
That's wow. So you arrived at Hopkins in 1987, 86, going into 87. What was it like during fall ball there? What was it like before your season started?
My first memory is going into class, some kind of American history class. I was overdressed because I thought it was like fall, but September in Baltimore is really hot. So I had a sweater on. I was godly sweating my face off. The class was full. This professor asked a question like 3 minutes into class, and every hand in the room goes up. And I'm sitting there like, whoa, what the heck is this? I'm like, these people have gotten the reading list. They've all done the work. I'm like, this is going to be rough. Gosh, these people, And so it was apparent right away that the academic environment there was far more competitive than I had ever imagined. Lacrosse wise, fall ball was Coach Zimmerman. We had a really enjoyable fall. It's kind of a more in the mold of what Duke does now. There was an hour of individual development, installation of some team schemes, and then there was an hour of scrimmage. And so it was very 3 times a week plus lifting, maybe 3 times a week of running. But it was low key. It was intense. It was competitive, but it was fun too because we weren't there was a lot of just actual playing.
Did you have any did you meet when you first got there? Were you close with your recruiting class, the guys that were coming in with you?
I had a really small class. Dave Howland from Avon was my roommate. We remain really close to this day. He lives out in San Francisco. I'll text him a couple times a week. He was a really good midfielder in high school that moved to the long pole position. His career was cut short by 2 ACLs. And back then, ACLs were like a death sentence. Their surgery was Scott Marr was a classmate of mine, the current coach at Albany. Jay Wright was an attackman. Excuse me, Jay Clark was an attackman on our team. Jay Wright was another guy on our team who's from Denver. But Jay Clark, I see he works for ESPN right now. And then Greg Kelly, a midfielder from St. Anthony's, guy who lives in Ocala, Florida now, was also a midfielder. So we had a really small class. 1, 2, 3. There was like 5 or 6 of us. That's it.
So going into your season in the spring, did you immediately have the goalie position, or was there a fight to be,
No,
the starter?
I didn't start until game 6 of my freshman year. And I remember game 1 was up at the Carrier Dome, and I had the best warm up of my life. I mean, I was flying. I mean, I was so excited from the venue and the music, and it was the best warm up of my life. I mean, and I remember watching that game on the bench. We lost by a goal, and it took 5 or 6 weeks, and in the long run, I think it was the best thing that I didn't play right away because, yeah, I was ready to play and start, but I don't think I was ready to deal with the success or failure that would have come my way in March and half of April. So in the long run, I think that was a big benefit to sit there and watch 5 weeks of what this is going to be like from a Monday to Saturday and Sunday, and the media coverage in Baltimore, and what it's like to be in the locker room, practice following a win or a loss, and just the whole scene. So I think that was one of the reasons why the second half of the season I was able to handle what was thrown our way.
So those first 5 games, do you think they were a particularly tough part of your schedule, even though they were like out of conference?
We went 3-2. I mean, we lost to Syracuse, we lost to Virginia at home. I got to play a little against Washington College. I forget who else we played, but in the loss to Virginia at home, we're 3-2, and out of the top 5, and they basically told me on Monday that I was going to start the following week at North Carolina. And it was, I was excited, and I thought I played well in practice and then the game, and we won. There was, Scott Marr made his first start that same day, as did Dave Howland. So it was a little bit of a youth movement. They turned to 3 freshmen for increased roles. And we went on from there.
So fast forward to Memorial Day weekend, 1987 championship. You mind going in a little bit into that matchup?
Well, the semifinals, we were matched up with Maryland, who that was that was my first loss as a college goalie. It was down in College Park. I think there was 17 to 19,000 fans in that place. They were undefeated. It was coming on Len Bias fatality, and this lacrosse team had really captured the imagination of all Maryland sports fans. They were scoring goals. Go back and look at their goal differential. They're winning games by 10 goals apiece. They were just, I remember playing there, and it was a close game going in the fourth quarter. They beat us 11-7. I think they outscored us 4-0 in the fourth quarter. But just being like, for the first time, just being out there on the field, like, holy mackerel, these guys are big, fast, and strong. They're good. They scored a goal first of the game on this fast break. It was like boom, 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 backside goal. I'm like, wow, well, that was pretty cool. And I'm like smiling, sitting there in the goal, like, and the place is going crazy. And we end up losing that game. So we're playing them in the playoffs. They're undefeated. They're untouchable. I mean, no one's going to beat this team. And somehow we managed to beat them. We played a great game. Brian Wood played a great game. Our coaching staff did an amazing job. We made adjustments. No one thought we could beat them, and we beat them. We beat them convincingly. And next thing you know, we're playing for a national championship. And I remember shaking hands with Paul Schmoller on Monday and being like, "Oh my God, I'm actually playing for a national championship. I've dreamed about this since I was like 6 years old, and I'm here right now. Wow, that's crazy." I'm like, I am so happy that I worked hard, that I spent the extra time, because this has all happened so fast that it's hard to believe.
Do you think it took a while to sink into you, like after you won the game, that like you just won a national championship, that you kind of just like achieved your goal that you've had since you were a little kid?
No, I was super happy. I thought we should have won by more than we did, quite frankly. But Cornell, I think I underestimated their tenacity. They were undefeated too, and we took a nice little lead, and they came back. They had great players, but they had more guts, man. They were just tough, and they weren't going to go away, and took the game down to the last second. And so that always taught me, like, as a broadcaster now, like a teammate, like I may not have great respect for the level of talent on a team, but when you're sitting there and you're 9-0, you're 10-0, you're 11-1, or you have this good record and you've been in close games and won them, there's something about that team you have to respect. Okay, there's something that's bigger. When all these parts come together, you have to respect that. Again, that chemistry, that feeling, that competitive edge. That was a competitive Cornell team. I mean, man, they had some dogs on that team who would come after you. They were tough, and when we took the lead, I thought we were going to coast to the finish line, but that didn't happen at all. So, my biggest regret, honestly, is that I didn't celebrate the championship as much as I should. At the time, in my eyes, it was one of what's going to be potentially four. And, I never held the trophy. I never held the trophy because I thought there'd always be another time down the road to hold the trophy. There's no picture of me with the trophy. You'll never see that. There was no, it was kind of like on to the next one. And now you realize what a foolish decision that was, not to soak up and enjoy that moment more.
Moving forward, 1989 championship game, Johns Hopkins against Syracuse. It was 23,000 fans at the game. It's most ever at a lacrosse game. Playing one of the two most historic programs in all of lacrosse. You have Gary Gate on the other side, and you're going to be going mashing up against him. What was going through your head in that game?
That was the game we expected, the game we had been training for more than a year. We were a little shorthanded defensively. We were without two of our starters. Dave Hallen, my roommate, as I said, he tore his ACL. Greg Lilly, who was a second-team All-American. And ultimately, I think we just ran out of guys who could cover some of their great players. Put a lot of pressure on Petro to cover Gary and Brian Volker and Billy Dwan, and everyone did the best they could. And Rodney Dumpson made the game-winning shots. He's the guy we wanted to take the shot, and he beat me. One pinged off the post and in. And I just feel lucky to have played in that game. Quite honestly, I have great friendships with some of the guys on Syracuse. I have so much respect for a guy like Pat McCabe and Matty Palem and the Gates I played with after college, Tommy Marichek, Coach Simmons, Coach Desko. It was just, I knew after the game when we lost, I was devastated. I mean, it took me 2 years to get over that game, quite honestly. And I remember after the game going back to my apartment, and I was so angry because I knew that what was at stake. I mean, I just knew in the back of my head that was an epic game that people will be talking about, that you lost by a goal. You didn't play good enough. I mean, I played good. I didn't play good enough. There's two shots that I'd like back. And if I make those saves, we win by a goal. So that's something that I don't have nightmares. I don't have, my nightmares are limited to my wrestling career. believe it or not. I never dream of lacrosse, ever. I've never dreamed of lacrosse.
Really?
I dream of the state tournament as a high school senior losing, yes, repetitively. And I can't, that drives me more than anything.
I think probably why that is because wrestling it's just you and the other guy. You don't have your teammates with you. It's just like because I used to wrestle and I just remember just being on the mat and I just felt like completely lonely. I didn't have any like there was nothing going on. It was like completely silent. Like you draining everything out, and it's just like it's scary being in the circle. Not
Yeah.
like I could see
And
why
it's
you
on
say
you. It's on you when you lose as a lacrosse team, even if you're the goalie, you can always rationalize, well, it wasn't my fault. Well, when you lose a wrestling match, it's pretty much your fault. And when I lost in the state tournament, having a 3-2 lead through the entire match until like 8 seconds to go, was knowing that was the end too. For lacrosse, for me, even after college, there was always the next season. There was club, there was pro. So it never really ended until you wanted it to end. But wrestling, for me, at high school, it was over when it was over, and it had a bad ending. And that hasn't sat well.
Yeah, I could imagine. So you graduated from Johns Hopkins in 1990. You turned to start getting into sports broadcasting, and I think your first thing you started doing was horse races up in Saratoga, right? Am I right?
No, I started doing radio for Hopkins games the next year in '91. Howard Mash and Bill Tanton asked me to join them, and it was so much fun. I can't believe it. Those guys welcomed me in. We did Hopkins home and away schedule, did a little traveling. Howard was a piece of work. His family owned Mash's Ham Company in Baltimore. He's a pretty wealthy, flamboyant guy who liked to go out to dinners after games. Bill Tanton was a Baltimore sports writer who had covered the Colts and, John Hopkins lacrosse and all sorts of Baltimore sporting events at Preakness for years. And so our banter, our stories, I was 22, 23, and those guys are in the 40s and 50s. And it was awesome. So we did that. And then 2 years later, that morphed into like a 5 TV game package for home team sports. All the while I was working for Citibank in Towson in a credit card business that they had. I was in HR, hiring and interviewing tons of employees, and virtually miserable every single day, and didn't like my job at all.
So how did you start getting into sports broadcasting? Did you do a little bit of in college or study a little bit of in college?
No, it was just lacrosse that led to a gig into covering the indoor game, the MILL, back in like 94 or 95. I'm 5 years out of college. I got that. So I worked with Leaf and Christy Lee for a year or 2 or 3. The college games became like 5 to 10 games on cable. And then ESPN called me. I did my first championship in 1995. But it took me about 12 years where broadcasting was part-time after college. Okay. My friends were buying houses. My friends were having kids. My friends were getting married, and I was still scrapping. But I had a dream. And so those first 10 to 12 years after college, it was pretty rough. And then I signed my first contract, and then I'm like, oh, wow, I'm doing this full time all of a sudden. And from there, it was a matter of broadening outside of lacrosse. So it was doing college football, it was doing some horse racing, it was doing college basketball, it was doing hockey and the wrestling tournament.
Besides lacrosse, what have been, or football, since we already spoke about football, what have been some of your favorite other sports that you've enjoyed calling?
Well, I mean, go back, to cover a Kentucky Derby, I love the championships though. At the end of the day, to cover 16 NCAA wrestling championships, those moments are just incredible. I covered a couple soccer Final Fours, and then I've covered maybe 6 to 8 Frozen Fours, ice hockey. So I have so much respect for those teams. The way they compete, the way they come together, the coaches, they're just love their mindset. And so anytime individually or a team is going for a gold trophy late in the season, there's just such benefit to being around them. I've learned so many things about team building and excellence as competitors, and I've just been really fortunate to be around those elite events.
Do you see any similarities between each of the sports that you've covered, college sports that you covered, whether it's a team sport or an individual sport that you see in all those athletes?
Oh yeah, I mean, there's got to be an investment. There's got to be a level of work ethic that borders on being psychotic. Okay, if you want to be successful nowadays, I see that in wrestling, clear cut. Those guys put so much time in. but their mental game, they're so strong mentally. They refuse to ever visualize themselves losing. Every time they win, in their minds, it's like, yeah, this is what was going to happen. This is what I saw happen, and this is what happened. And it's a maniacal in a way. The hockey guys are a little different than the lacrosse guys. That is, the coaches and the mindset is like, hockey teams do what they do. Like, this is how we move the puck. This is how we set up our offense. This is how we defend. They're a little less concerned about the opponent. They're more in the mindset of, look, if we do our things and we do them well, we're going to win this game. We get in the corners, we get the free pucks, we take the body. Lacrosse has somewhere has gotten into this coaching game where they think that their strategy is going to make the ultimate difference, and it can make a difference, but it's a nuanced difference. And I still think that more lacrosse teams need to focus on themselves and less about their opponents.
That's actually very interesting. So when did you first call your first NCAA national championship for lacrosse?
1995. The first game I called, I believe, was Maryland against Johns Hopkins in the semifinal when Brian Doherty upset Johns Hopkins, and then Syracuse won the title on Monday. Nick Liccamelli, complete unknown, with a 3-goal run before halftime. I think they scored 3 goals in 21 seconds before halftime, and they won the title in '95. It was Casey Powell's freshman year.
So have you been called since 95? Have you been calling?
95.
Yeah. Have you been calling every single college lacrosse national championship since then?
Yeah, in every semifinal. It's 25 of them minus last year's pandemic. It would have been 26. One at a time. Basically, I've been very lucky. I've worked with different producers, different talent in the booth. Lee Felsmo taught me so much. He opened the doors for me. I listen to his calls now. They're all over social media, which is fantastic. He was very talented, and we've rekindled our friendship. I saw him this winter. Eamon McEnany, Dave Ryan, a wonderful storyteller. Eamon brought this passion and knowledge of the game, and now we've got Anish, the master poet. I mean, he's smooth with the word. He's
I thought you were the poet. I thought you were the poet with
no. Anish is the rapper poet.
Oh.
And then Kark. Initially when Kark showed up on the scene, it was challenging for me, honestly, because it meant that I got to talk less. And so at first you're like, okay, well, I got to tell you, it's been the greatest thing ever, because I get to think more. I can be more succinct. I can organize my thoughts. I can play stuff off of him. He can see things and play off of me. And so now the dynamic is much better. And, it's a great lesson. It's a great lesson. It's like, initially we all in our lives, we have fear, like, something's going to happen here that's going to make my life less what it should be. Well, give it a chance, because in the long run, I remember my boss, John Vassallo, and he was great with me. And it took me about 20 minutes to realize, oh, wow, our shows are better with Kark. I'm better with Kark. This is outstanding.
What do you think you've seen the biggest change over that 25, 26 year history from 95 all the way to present day in college lacrosse?
Well, I think more programs have ramped it up. Back then it was Princeton, Virginia, Syracuse, Johns Hopkins. Okay, now you every year, like Leaf and I used to joke, hey, let's while we have the cameras here, let's record next year's Open. We'll just do 2 versions. It's either going to be Princeton, Virginia, or Syracuse, Virginia, or Syracuse. Like we knew. Nowadays you don't know. I mean, especially this upcoming year, I could give you 12 teams who could compete in championship weekend, maybe 15, and they're all pretty darn good. So the pack is deep. That second pack, teams who can make the NCAA tournament, is gargantuan. There's 35 teams who legitimately have a chance to make the NCAA tournament. That's half of the whole population. And that's wonderful. And these teams are so good now. Again, these teams from the mid majors are outstanding. So everyone's much better. The players are much better, bigger, faster, stronger, more skilled. The product's good. We just need people to come out and get in the seats and watch games in person. And we need more people to watch on TV.
For sure. So in recent history, who do you think have been your favorite players to watch?
That's interesting. I look at it like I'm more of a team guy for some reason. Like I'm enamored with watching a team perform. Uh,
Older team. How about who have been your favorite like individual teams from each year to watch?
well, I mean, my favorite championship game, I think, is the Navy Syracuse game, and was at '04.
Yeah.
Uh, that was an unbelievable game. That was a rainy day, all up and down the East Coast. It's the highest TV rating we ever did. And Navy's a national name. Syracuse had star power. It was fast paced, great tempo game, and that was one that I'd put above the pack. The Maryland Carolina championship from a few years back was just an epic game. Just the pacing, the shot clock has been such a big plus. We had about a decade of crap finals and crap semifinals with the slow down game, and man, it's been the last couple of years have been outstanding. But that Maryland Carolina game was like, wow, this is really happening. This is crazy. It got good, better and better, and it just kept getting. It was just an epic game. I mean, if you're a young fan out there and you haven't seen that one, see if you can pull that one up on YouTube.
That's that game. I went to that game because my cousin played on the Maryland team. That game inspired me to like love lacrosse because like watching that was a war. That was like the coolest lacrosse game I've ever seen. Even though it wasn't the outcome I wanted, that was just legit. That was best lacrosse I've ever watched.
That's exactly right. Like when I was a kid, I remember I was at the 1983 national championship game, rooting for Syracuse over Hopkins, and they pulled this massive comeback. And then I taped like the 84, 85 when I was in high school, and I'd watch them, I don't know, 15 times a day. And those games became such division. Back then, lacrosse was like never on TV. But man, if you're a young guy, you're a young player, and you want to see what it's like, what it can be, that Maryland Carolina game in the finals was unbelievable.
Maryland Brown too. The game before the game
Maryland Brown, yeah, no,
another
Maryland
crazy
Brown
game.
was that game could have gone either way. Brown could easily have won that game. Epic, high scoring, a lot of action, a lot of drama, a lot of storylines.
What about, do you think the 2014 national championship game was another great game to call since there was like 100 stars that played in that game with Duke and Notre Dame?
Yeah, the Notre Dame championships have generally been a little on the low scoring side. The 2010 one might have been the worst championship I ever covered. I mean, the Notre Dame, if that was in 2010, the Notre Dame Duke. I mean, we went through a defensive period there where I give Loyola all the credit in the world. They had an outstanding defense and a defense that'll stand up. Their numbers will stand up, but the game was not. The game had a lot of slowdown, dead periods. And now with the shot clock, we don't really have any dead periods, which I love. All the games go together. I'd have to like look at a list and tell you like things that stand out to me. The Hopkins semifinal in what was it, '05 against Virginia when the storm came in. That was a great game. That was an epic game. When Benson Irwin scored the game winner, I think it was '05.
Oh, I seen this on YouTube. That was an awesome. It was downpour. Was it the game that
was like
downpour?
a movie.
Yeah,
That game's like a movie. I mean, that game's like, Kyle Harrison's got this back injury. Can he perform? The drama. Hopkins builds a lead. Here comes the storm. Here comes Pasquet and Starsia and Ward and here comes Virginia. They got the momentum, but now the storm blows everybody off the field. There's a reset, and we come back, and Harrison scores the first goal. That was like you want a movie script.
That's what you're going. Yeah, go after that.
Plus they were outstanding teams. I mean, Virginia the next year wouldn't lose a game, and they crushed everybody in '06. That was a really good Virginia team in '05 that lost in that semifinal.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we could go on another whole half-hour ramble about this, but
the funny thing is like if you just ask me, what do you remember? I'm like, I don't really remember anything. But if you show me a box score or you point or say a player's name, like I have all these stories, but they're kind of, I don't know. It's not necessarily age because I've always been this way. They just got to be dug up because there's a lot up there. It's like a giant filing cabinet, I guess.
I'll give you one for an example. It was 2017 national championship game. John Garino, Maryland was up. John Garino he wins the face-off, and it's like almost when like you see Maryland's turn the tide. He takes a shot, he misses the shot, but then you see like the whole momentum switch into Maryland's favor.
Garino was a difference maker in that game.
Yeah,
he was their third string face-off guy that they called up.
Yeah, he was third. It was Austin Henderson, then Will Bonaparte, and then John Garino. He went 4 for 7 against Baptiste. He also went like 80% against TD Earl in the quarterfinals, and then he went
Yeah.
12 for 17. I'm pretty sure against Withers. And I think all the guys he went against were first, second, third team All Americans.
It's interesting because Maryland was hanging around the championship for so many years and finally got one. And you could argue that the team that won might not have been their best team of the 5 or 6 that played in the semis or the finals in that time period, but they were the toughest. They had a certain swagger about them with Rambo and Heacock and some veterans, and they refused to lose. So you probably could make an argument that some of the prior Maryland teams were more talented, but the most talented team doesn't always win, obviously.
I mean, I think the 2016 team was so much better because they had Pat Young. Also, they had Pat Young on their midfield line. They had James Bull. They had the entire defense, who was Kyle Bernlohr, Matt Dunn. It was like what the Whipsnakes defense is right now. They were all there. They were all in their prime. They were juniors and seniors. They were the most talented team. But Virginia just went on a crazy run.
How'd they lose?
They lost on defense. They lost from Chris Cloutier just getting shots on the inside.
They lost on defense. Something happened towards the end of the year. You look at their goals against, and something happened in the last 3, 4, 5 weeks of the season where their defense just wasn't the same. And Bernlohr had to stand on his head, but they're still giving up almost in the teens. They're towards the end of the year. And it just doesn't make sense given the talent that was on that group.
I mean, national championship game, I forget who got the penalty, but it was that stupid check in the back that got that. They had the game. They essentially had the game. They just had to bring it downfield and get the goal. But then they allowed North Carolina to get the man up and allowed Cloutier to just take an easy step down shot. So it's just like those stupid. It's not. I'm not going to say stupid, but just those super small plays that could just completely change the entire outcome of that.
I completely agree with you. Having experienced those myself, I know that when you have two really good teams evenly matched, a play here and a play there is going to decide the game. You never know where that play is going to be. For me, it was giving up a soft first goal in a national title game. Like, okay, so what? Well, at the end of the day, when it's a 1-goal game, you go back and that first goal probably shouldn't be on the board. A different scenario, but it's those deep. That's why coaches go crazy, because the little things along the way. What I always felt in the tournament, later in the tournament, you have two really good teams. The top 8 to 10 to 12 guys are going to kind of neutralize each other. Like Casey Powell's going to play great. TD Erling, is going to play great. They're kind of given. Like, these guys are outstanding at what they do. It's guys 13 through 20. It's guys 15 through 22 on the roster. The second midfield, your second pole, the sub-attackman, the backup face-off guy, John Garino, for example. Like, what can you get out of those guys? And I thought when Virginia won the national title a couple years ago, they got wonderful production from some guys on their roster, 15 through 22, who came on. They played a little zone defense. Like, those guys can win you a national championship game. I felt sometimes in games that I played in, kind of under, everyone points to the stars, but it was those guys who really set the table. The second midfield, what kind of production did you get out of them? Subs off the bench. Did guys come off the bench and shit themselves and play horrible, or did they contribute?
Yeah, it's because also you have a whole season. It's May. You've been playing since February. Your first team's your first line attackman's so exhausted. Whoever's like Ben Reeves has been going against the best defender all year. He's probably worn out, and then you have your first midfield line who's been running up the field running up and down the field. And you guys, hopefully the second midfield lines have fresh legs and are feeling good, and so maybe that's why they're making the difference in those games.
And a lot of times it's positive coaching, because the two types of players you see who contribute in those scenarios are the grizzled senior, maybe the guy who lost his starting role somewhere along the line, was bypassed by a superstar, but he hung in there, and his experience comes to the surface. I think about Syracuse and their teams. They always had some no-name senior produce in May. The other would be your youngsters, your freshmen, your highly recruited guys who have now had a full season they burst through that freshman wall late in the year, and all of a sudden they become contributors in May. They're so used to that level of success that followed them throughout their careers. They wouldn't be playing at these schools, but then they kind of dig in. They find a second reserve of air, and they finish off the season as being a difference maker in a tournament game, which sets up a great career as a sophomore, junior, and beyond. So, but that usually comes down to coaching because those roles, their story, I think, tends to have some frustration along the line prior to championship weekend.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. It's Sergio, even though he didn't play in national championship, Sergio Saucedo was a walk-on at Syracuse. Like didn't really have any recognition. He was fighting. He was only playing time he got was his freshman and sophomore year was getting like spots on the wing during the face-off. So that's a kind of guy who just kept on fighting until he was getting then he got to the second midfield line. Then he started getting the first midfield line. Then he was the best player on the team. So guys like that are almost what shape, if they go to championship weekend, what championship weekend's kind of all about.
Yeah, they can be difference makers, believe it or not. And everyone points to the stars, but if the stars are all good, they kind of neutralize each other. And then what's next in tier 2? What are your tier 2 guys like?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. Kessenich, for coming on the Low to High podcast. I really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to come talk with me and talk about this really good discussion about college lacrosse. Wish you the best of luck with this upcoming, with you finishing up your college football season. And I hope to see you in the booth this 2021.
Yeah, thank you. I got a handful of football games left, and then we'll find out about the 2021 season. Trying to stay positive with the vaccine news. Hopefully we'll have a season. Hopefully it'll be more than a partial season. I hope everyone's able to get back to school in the spring in person and play some lacrosse, whether you're a college player, a high school, or a rec league player. Kids need to play, and hopefully we're heading in that direction.
For sure, 100%. Thank you so much.
Thank you.